10 years ago, my father accused me of stealing 10 grand and threw me onto the streets. Yesterday, my brother found the missing cash rotting in the basement. Now father wants a truce, forgetting one tiny detail: I secretly own the house he's living in. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The migraine had been sitting behind my left eye since Tuesday, a dull, throbbing pressure that felt like a bruise on my brain. It was Friday night, the rain was lashing against the windows of my apartment, and I was curled up on the sofa under a weighted blanket, trying to will the pain away with darkness and the hum of the HVAC unit. I wasn't sick, exactly, just drained. My job as a corporate risk auditor meant I spent 60 hours a week tearing apart companies' financial mistakes, finding the rot in their ledgers, and delivering bad news to powerful men who didn't want to hear it. It was exhausting, thankless work, but it paid for the silence and safety of this apartment. It paid for the distance I had put between myself and the past. When my phone buzzed on the coffee table, vibrating against the glass, I almost ignored it. The screen lit up the dark room with a harsh white glow. I squinted at the name. Thea. My stomach dropped. My younger brother never called at night. We had a tacit agreement, a set of boundaries constructed to keep my life separate from the toxicity of the house he still lived in. If Theo was calling at 9:00 p.m. on a Friday, something was wrong. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the migraine. Had something happened to Haley? Was it a medical emergency? I sat up, the blanket pooling around my waist, and swiped answer. Theo, is everything okay? There was a silence on the other end. Not the silence of a dropped call, but the heavy, wet silence of someone trying to compose themselves. I could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven. Abby, he choked out. He sounded like a child again, like the 12-year-old boy I used to shield from our father's temper. Abby, I found it. I frowned, my hand tightening on the phone. Found what? Theo, you're scaring me. Are you hurt? No, he said, his voice cracking. I'm in the basement. I was tearing out the old drywall behind the wet bar like Dad wanted for the remodel. He took a shuddering breath. I found the cigar box, the Monte Cristo box. The world seemed to stop spinning. The air left the room. The Monte Cristo box. I hadn't heard those words in a decade. Just hearing them summoned the phantom scent of cedar, stale whiskey, and the metallic tang of fear. That box was the centerpiece of the worst night of my life. It was the object that had turned me from a daughter into a criminal, from a family member into a pariah. The box is gone, Theo, I whispered, my voice trembling. He said I stole it. He said I took the cash and threw the box in the river. That's why he kicked me out. No, Theo said, and I could hear the tears in his voice now. It wasn't gone. It fell. It must have fallen years ago. There was a gap between the safe and the back of the false wall. It slid down into the framing. I pulled the drywall, and it was just sitting there, on the footer. I closed my eyes. Is the money inside? It's all here, Theo sobbed. The bands are still on the stacks. The dates, Abby, the dates on the wrappers are from 10 years ago. You didn't touch it. You never touched it. I sat in the dark, the rain hammering against the glass, feeling a sensation I couldn't quite name. It wasn't relief. Relief implies the end of pain. This was something hotter, darker. It was the sudden, violent validation of a truth I had screamed until my throat bled, a truth no one had believed. Does he know? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Yeah, Theo said. I brought it upstairs. I put it on the kitchen table in front of him. He's sitting there looking at it. And he told me to call you. I waited. I waited for Theo to say that our father was crying, that he was on his knees, that he was begging for forgiveness for destroying my life over a mistake that was his own fault. He said, Theo hesitated. He said, call your sister. Tell her the mystery is solved. Tell her she can come to the birthday party next week. It's time we put this whole mess behind us." The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. He didn't say sorry. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He called it a mystery. He called 10 years of estrangement, homelessness, and trauma a mess to be put behind us. The betrayal I felt in that moment was sharper than the night he kicked me out. That night, at least, E had believed he was righteous. This time, he knew he was wrong, and he simply didn't care. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. It was a confirmation that, to him, I had never been a daughter. I was just an inconvenience he had finally decided to tolerate again. I ended the call with Theo promising to think about it. I placed the phone face down on the table and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. The city lights of Chicago blurred through the rain, a smear of gold and red. 10 years. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. I wasn't the terrified 19-year-old girl sobbing on the front lawn in her pajamas anymore. I was Abigail. I was a senior auditor. I wore tailored suits. I had a savings account that could buy my father's precious Mercedes 3 times over. I had clawed my way up from a shelter bed to a corner office. But my father, Arthur, didn't know that. To him, I was likely still the ungrateful thief who had probably scraped by waitressing or failed out of community college. He hadn't checked. He hadn't called once. Not on Christmas. Not when Mom died. God, Mom. The memory of her funeral 3 years ago washed over me. I had stood at the back of the cemetery, hidden behind a large oak tree, wearing oversized sunglasses so Arthur wouldn't spot me and cause a scene. I had watched him play the grieving widower, accepting condolences, looking frail and sympathetic. He had looked right through the spot where I was standing, oblivious. He thought he was the king of his little kingdom. He thought he held all the cards because he controlled the family home, the manor, as he pretentiously called the 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. I walked to my desk and unlocked the bottom drawer. It was ironic, really. He had accused me of stealing from a safe, and now my entire life was built around securing things, investigating things, knowing where the bodies were buried. I pulled out a thick file folder marked Personal Estate. I opened it and stared at the document on top. It was a deed of trust. My mother, bless her quiet, terrified heart, had never stood up to Arthur while she was alive. She was too afraid of his shouting, his cold silences, his financial bullying. But she had been smarter than he gave her credit for. When her parents passed away and left her the house, her parents' house, not Arthur's, she had quietly set up a trust. She had transferred the title of the property into it to protect it from Arthur's business ventures, which usually involved high-risk schemes that bordered on gambling. When she died, the terms of the trust executed. Arthur had the right to live in the house for his lifetime. He had the life estate. But the ownership, the fee simple title, that didn't go to him. It went to me. I ran my finger over the legal description of the property. Lot 4, Block 2, Maplewood Estates. Arthur thought he owned that house. He acted like he owned it. He was currently renovating the basement of my house. And, according to the rumors Theo had let slip over the years, Arthur was planning to sell it. He wanted to downsize, cash out the $500,000 of equity, and retire to a condo in Florida with his new girlfriend, a woman half his age he'd met at the club. He thought he could just sell it. He thought he could call me up, offer a non-apology for ruining my youth, and then cash out the legacy my mother left for me. I looked at the date on the deed. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I whispered to the empty room. My signature. He couldn't sell. He couldn't refinance. He couldn't even legally tear down that wall in the basement without my permission as the trustee. He was a tenant living in my property, acting like a feudal lord. My phone buzzed again, a text from Haley, my little sister. She was only 12 when I was kicked out and 22 now. She was the innocent one, the one who just wanted everyone to get along. Haley, Theo told me, please come, Abby, Dad is... Well, you know Dad, but he wants to fix it. He's making a big announcement at the party. Please. A big announcement. That would be the sale of the house. He was going to announce he was selling our childhood home to fund his golden years. I looked at the deed again. A cold, sharp plan began to form in my mind. It wasn't the hot rage of a teenager anymore. It was the calculated, icy precision of an auditor finding a discrepancy. He wanted me to come to the party. He wanted to move past the accusation. "Okay, Arthur," I said softly, "I'll come." To understand why I couldn't just accept the olive branch, you have to understand the night of the accusation. I wasn't a rebellious teenager. I was the surrogate mother. Our mom was already sick then, battling the early stages of the autoimmune disorder that would eventually kill her. I was 19, commuting to college in the city, but coming home every night to cook dinner, help Haley with her homework, and make sure Theo stayed out of trouble. I did the laundry. I managed the household budget because Mom was too tired and Arthur was too busy. I saved them thousands of dollars a year just by cutting coupons and managing the utilities. I was devoted. I loved them with a fierce, protective intensity. The $10,000 in the safe wasn't just cash. It was the emergency fund Arthur kept for his liquid needs. He liked to feel powerful, liked to flash a roll of bills at the country club. The night it went missing, he didn't ask questions. He didn't look for it. He had been drinking, scotch, neat, and he was in a mood to hurt someone. He found the empty spot in the safe, marched into my room, and dumped my backpack out onto the floor. When he didn't find the money, he decided I must have hidden it. "You're the only one with the combination," he had roared, his face purple with rage. "Mom has it, you have it," I had screamed back, crying. "I didn't touch it." "Get out," he had spat. "Get out of my house. You're a thief and a liar. I won't harbor a criminal under my roof." He gave me 10 minutes. I left with a duffel bag of clothes and my textbooks. I slept in my car for 3 weeks. I showered at the university gym. I ate ramen noodles dry because I couldn't afford hot water. And now, let's talk about Arthur. Arthur was a man who believed perception was reality. He was a retired architect, though he hadn't designed anything significant in 20 years. He coasted on a reputation built in the 80s. He was handsome in a silver fox, patrician way, always in a pressed shirt, always smelling of expensive cologne, always smiling with his mouth, but never his eyes. He was a narcissist of the highest order. To Arthur, people were props. Mom was the prop wife. I was the prop daughter, until I malfunctioned. Theo and Haley were the heirs to his imaginary empire. The next morning, Saturday, I drove out to the suburbs. I needed to see the battlefield before the war began. I parked down the street, watching the house. It looked the same, yet different. The hedges were manicured to within an inch of their lives. There was a new Lexus in the driveway, Arthur's. I saw him come out the front door. He was wearing a cashmere sweater tied around his shoulders, looking every bit the benevolent patriarch. He was talking to a landscaping crew, pointing imperiously at the flower beds. Then I saw the woman. She walked out behind him, linking her arm through his. She was blonde, striking, and looked to be about 35. This must be the girlfriend. She was wearing a tennis outfit and laughing at something he said. He leaned in and kissed her cheek, a gesture of affection I hadn't seen him give my mother in 15 years. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He gestured to the house, my house, with a sweeping motion of his arm, as if presenting it to her. She clapped her hands in delight, looking up at the facade as if measuring it for curtains. He was promising it to her. He was likely using the proceeds of the sale to fund their life together. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Theo. "He's asking if you're coming. He says he needs a head count for the caterer. He says tell her to dress appropriately. There will be important people there." Important people, his old firm partners, the club members, the people whose validation he craved like oxygen. He wasn't inviting me to reconcile. He was inviting me because a missing daughter looks bad for the family image. He wanted the perfect tableau, the benevolent father forgiving the wayward child. He wanted to show everyone that he was magnanimous. I typed back, "Tell him I'll be there, and tell him I'm bringing a gift." I watched Arthur laugh at something the landscaper said, completely unaware that the thief he had discarded was watching him, and that I held the match that would burn his entire false reality to the ground. Monday morning arrived with the sterile precision of a spreadsheet. I was sitting in my office in downtown Chicago, 23 floors up, watching the fog roll off the lake. My dual monitors were glowing, but instead of the quarterly projections for a manufacturing conglomerate, I had something much more volatile on my screen: Arthur's life. The decision to investigate him hadn't been emotional. It was a necessary due diligence. If I was walking back into the lion's den, I needed to know if the lion had teeth or if he was just gumming the furniture. I started with public records. As a forensic accountant, I knew how to follow the paper trails people thought they had erased. It took me less than an hour to dismantle the myth of Arthur, the successful architect. He hadn't had a registered project in 5 years. His firm, Arthur V Designs, had dissolved its LLC status for failure to pay state fees 2 years ago. Then came the liens. I pulled up the county clerk's database. There were separate mechanics liens on the house, my house, for unpaid contractor work, a roofer, a landscaper, and a pool maintenance company. He wasn't paying his bills. "He's broke," I whispered, scrolling through the judgments. But broke wasn't the whole story. I dug deeper into the credit reports I could access through my specialized software. Legal, barely, but justified given my ownership stake in the property he was debasing. Arthur had 3 maxed-out credit cards. He was leasing the Lexus. And most damning of all, there was a pending application for a bridge loan with a predatory lender using the house as collateral. He was trying to borrow against equity he didn't have. I sat back, steepling my fingers. The picture was becoming clear. The remodel in the basement that Theo was doing wasn't just a project, it was staging. Arthur was dressing the house up for a quick sale. He needed the cash from the house to pay off the debts, lease the condo in Florida, and maintain the illusion of wealth for his new girlfriend, Vanessa. The 70th birthday party wasn't a celebration. It was a launch event. He was going to announce the move, announce the sale, and secure his social standing before the house of cards collapsed. My phone buzzed. It was Theo again. "Theo, he's acting weird. He's got a realtor coming over at 2:00 p.m. today, a guy named Brock. Do you know him?" I didn't need to know him. I knew the type. "Me, don't sign anything, Theo. Just watch. Does he know I'm coming to dinner tonight?" "Theo, yeah. He told the caterer to add a plate. But, Abby, he told Vanessa you're troubled. He said you've had a hard time keeping a job." I laughed, a harsh, dry sound in the quiet office. Troubled, hard time keeping a job. The projection was almost impressive. I printed everything: the liens, the dissolved LLC notice, the credit inquiries. I put them in a crisp, black leather portfolio. Then I made a call to my attorney, a shark named Marcus who handled trust litigation. "Marcus," I said when he picked up, "the deed is still ironclad, right? The life estate provision." "Ironclad, Abigail," Marcus assured me. "He has the right to occupancy. He does not have the right to encumber the title or sell the fee simple interest. If he tries to list it, the title search will flag the trust immediately. He can't sell what he doesn't own." "He's trying to," I said. "He has a realtor coming today." "Then he's committing fraud," Marcus said flatly. "Do you want me to send a cease and desist?" "No," I said, watching the fog clear to reveal the jagged skyline. "Not yet. He needs to hang himself first. I want him to make the announcement. I want him to commit to the lie in front of everyone." "That's cold, Abby," Marcus said, though I could hear the admiration in his voice. "He kicked me out for $10,000 he lost," I replied. "I'm just balancing the ledger." I hung up and looked at the clock. It was time to go home to the suburbs, home to the manor. I wasn't going there to fight. I was going there to gather intelligence. I needed to see Vanessa. I needed to see how deep her claws were in, and I needed to see if Arthur had any humanity left or if he was truly just a hollow shell of ego and debt. The driveway of the manor was filled with cars. The Lexus, Theo's beat-up truck, and a bright red convertible that screamed midlife crisis, Vanessa's, no doubt. I parked my modest sedan on the street. I didn't want to block anyone in. I wanted a quick exit if things went south. Walking up the front path felt like walking through a dream. The azaleas were overgrown. The paint on the porch railing was peeling slightly, details Arthur would never have tolerated 10 years ago. The facade was cracking, just like his finances. I rang the bell. It wasn't Arthur who opened it, it was Haley. My little sister had grown up. She was 22 now, taller, with streaks of blue in her dark hair and a cautious, hopeful smile. She threw her arms around me before I could even say hello. "Abby," she squealed, squeezing me tight, "you actually came." I hugged her back, smelling the familiar scent of the house, old wood, lemon polish, and something stale underneath. "I missed you, Hales." Come in," she ushered me into the foyer. "Dad's in the living room with Vanessa. Theo is, hiding in the kitchen." I walked into the living room. It was exactly as I remembered, frozen in time, except for the woman sitting on my mother's favorite wingback chair. Vanessa was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s. She was scrolling on her phone, wearing enough jewelry to sink a small boat. Arthur stood by the fireplace, holding a crystal tumbler of scotch. He looked older. The silver hair was thinner, his skin ruddier, but the arrogance in his posture was untouched by time. "Well," Arthur said, turning to face me. He didn't smile. He didn't move to hug me. He just looked me up and down, assessing my suit, my shoes. "My bag, you look different, professional." "Hello, Arthur," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Abigail," he nodded. "This is Vanessa, my fiancée." Fiancé, the word hung in the air like a threat. Vanessa looked up, her eyes scanning me with a bored curiosity. "Oh, the lost daughter. Arthur talks about you. He said you were finding yourself." "I found myself a long time ago," I said, extending a hand she didn't shake. "Nice to meet you." "Drink," Arthur gestured to the bar cart. "No, thank you." "So," Arthur said, taking a sip of his scotch. "Theo found the money. Incredible, really. 10 years it was sitting there, a complete misunderstanding." I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. "A misunderstanding? You accused me of a felony, Arthur. You threw me out at 11:00 p.m. in a thunderstorm." Arthur waved a hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "We were both emotional. You were a difficult teenager. I was stressed. Water under the bridge. The important thing is the money is back. The family is whole." He walked over to the mantel and picked up a large, ornate envelope. "And just in time," he said, his chest puffing out. "We have big news. Vanessa and I are moving to Sarasota next month. We've found a beautiful condo on the water. We're listing the house on Monday." There it was, the lie. "Listing the house?" I asked, feigning confusion. "But where will Theo and Haley go?" "They're adults," Arthur said coldly. "It's time they stood on their own 2 feet. Like you did, it was good for you, wasn't it? Made you tough." I looked at Haley, who was standing in the doorway, looking pale. She didn't know. "Arthur," I said, stepping closer, "you can't list the house." His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, it's my house. I paid the mortgage for 30 years. "Mom paid the mortgage," I corrected him softly, "with her inheritance, and the title." "The title is in my name," he snapped, his voice rising. The old anger was there, simmering just beneath the surface. "Don't you start with me, Abigail. You just got back. Don't ruin this." "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said, reaching for my bag. "I'm trying to save you from a lawsuit. You know about the trust." He froze. For a split second, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Then he masked it with a sneer. "That old thing?" he scoffed. "My lawyer said it's invalid, a technicality. Mom wasn't in her right mind when she signed it." "She was perfectly sane," I said, my voice hardening. "And it's not a technicality. It's a recorded deed. It's my house, he shouted, slamming his glass down on the mantel. And I am selling it. We need this move. And I won't let an ungrateful, vindictive child stand in my way. You're just jealous because I'm finally happy. Vanessa looked between us, sensing the shift in power but not understanding the source. Artie, what is she talking about? Nothing, Arthur snarled. She's just trying to cause trouble, like she always does, just like when she stole the money. I didn't steal the money, I yelled, my composure finally cracking. Theo found it, you admitted it. Did he? Arthur stepped closer, looming over me. Or did you put it there? Maybe you snuck back in. Maybe this is all a long con to get back in my good graces. The gaslighting was breathtaking. He was rewriting reality in real time to suit his narrative. He didn't care about the truth. He cared about winning. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him for what he was. A desperate, small man terrified of losing his status. Okay, I said, stepping back. I took a deep breath. Okay, Arthur, list the house. Do whatever you want. He smiled, a smug, victorious curl of his lip. That's what I thought. Now are you staying for dinner? Vanessa ordered sushi. I've lost my appetite, I said. I turned and walked out. Haley tried to grab my arm, but I gently brushed her off. I'll see you at the party, Hales, I whispered. I promise, everything will be fixed at the party. I didn't go home. I drove 2 blocks over to a coffee shop and waited for Theo. I texted him to meet me there once the happy couple went to bed. He showed up an hour later, looking like he'd been through a war. He slid into the booth opposite me, his hands covered in drywall dust. He's insane, Theo whispered. He's telling Vanessa that you're mentally unstable, that you made up the trust thing. Theo, I said, sliding the folder across the table. Look at this. He opened it, he stared at the liens. The credit card debt, the bridge loan application. He's broke, Theo asked, his eyes wide. Completely, I said. He needs the house sale to pay off the debts before they sue him. If he doesn't sell, he loses everything. The cars, the club membership, Vanessa. But he can't sell, Theo said. You said. I own the house, Theo, I said quietly. Mom left it to me, in a trust. He has a life estate, meaning he can live there until he dies. But he can. Sell it, he can't mortgage it. And he certainly can't kick you and Haley out. Theo put his head in his hands. God, he's been lying to us for years. He makes us pay rent, Abby. Did you know that? I pay him $800 a month for the basement room. Haley pays $600. I felt a cold fury rise in my chest. He was charging his own children rent to live in a house I owned, while he blew his money on leases and liquor. That stops now, I said, but I need you to do something for me. I need to know if he's tried to forge my signature. How? The realtor, Brock, he would have needed a listing agreement signed by the owner. If Arthur signed it, he either signed as himself, which is void, or he signed my name. Theo's face went pale. I saw him practicing signatures last week. On a notepad, I thought he was just doodling. He was writing Abigail over and over. The final piece of the puzzle. He wasn't just a bully, he was a felon. Can you get that notepad? I asked. It's in the trash in the study. I saw him toss it. Get it, I commanded, and get me a picture of the listing agreement if you see it lying around. The next 3 days were a blur of strategic maneuvering. I called Marcus and had him prepare a lawsuit, ready to file the second the house went on the market. I drafted an affidavit regarding the forgery. I built a case so airtight that not even Houdini could escape it. But Arthur wasn't done escalating. On Wednesday, 2 days before the party, I received a FedEx envelope at my office. It was from Arthur. Inside was a check for $5,000, half of the missing money. And a note, Abigail, here is your share of the found money. I am generous even when you are difficult. Enclosed is a quitclaim deed. Sign it to clear up the confusion with the title company. It's just a formality to remove Mom's old trust language. Bring it to the party. We can celebrate properly. Dad. I stared at the check. He was trying to buy me off with my own money he had accused me of stealing, in exchange for a house worth nearly $1 million. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was still the 19-year-old girl who just wanted her daddy to love her. He didn't realize he was dealing with a woman who audited Fortune 500 companies for a living. I picked up the quitclaim deed. It was a standard form, but the language was predatory. It would strip me of all rights to the property, transferring full ownership to Arthur V. Designs. I called Theo. "Did you get the notepad?" "Got it," Theo said, and I found the listing agreement. It's signed. "Abigail Vance, it's a forgery, Abby, a bad one." "Good," I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. "Bring everything to the party. Don't say a word to him. Let him think he's won." "What are you going to do?" Theo asked, sounding terrified. "I'm going to give him the stage," I said. "He wants to make a big announcement. I'm going to let him. And then I'm going to show everyone exactly who Arthur Vance really is." The stage was set. The players were in position. The evidence was gathered. Arthur wanted a celebration. I was going to give him a funeral for his reputation, his lies, and his control over our lives. Saturday evening arrived, draped in a humidity that made the air feel heavy and suffocating. I pulled up to the manor at 6:30 p.m. sharp. The driveway was already overflowing with luxury sedans, Mercedes, BMWs, a solitary Jaguar, creating a blockade of status symbols that Arthur had undoubtedly orchestrated. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I wore a tailored navy suit, sharp and severe, the kind I wore when I had to tell a CEO that his CFO was embezzling funds. My hair was pulled back in a tight chignon. I didn't look like a daughter coming to a birthday party. I looked like a prosecutor arriving at a crime scene. "Showtime," I whispered to the empty car. I grabbed the thick black portfolio from the passenger seat. Inside was the death warrant for Arthur's reputation. The trust deed, the forged listing agreement Theo had snagged, the notepad with Arthur's practice signatures, and the mechanic's liens. I walked up the path, the sound of clinking glass and polite, hollow laughter drifting from the backyard. The party was in full swing. Arthur had gone all out, string lights draped across the patio, a jazz trio playing in the corner, white linen tablecloths fluttering in the breeze. I spotted Theo and Haley near the punch bowl. They looked like hostages. Theo's eyes widened when he saw me, his gaze dropping immediately to the portfolio in my hand. He gave a microscopic nod. Arthur was in the center of the patio, holding court. He was wearing a cream-colored linen suit that probably cost more than my first car. Vanessa was clinging to his arm, looking radiant and victorious, already acting the part of the lady of the manor. "Abigail," Arthur's voice boomed across the patio. He raised his glass, forcing a smile that didn't reach his cold. Calculating eyes. "Everyone look, the prodigal daughter returns." The conversation died down. 30 pairs of eyes turned to me. These were Arthur's people, country club members, old business partners, people who judged worth by zip codes and watch brands. "Happy birthday, Arthur," I said, my voice projecting clearly over the jazz music. I didn't call him Dad. "Come, come," Arthur beckoned, clearly drunk on attention and expensive scotch. "Grab a drink, we were just about to make a toast." I walked into the center of the circle but didn't take a drink. I stood there, clutching the portfolio, a dark obelisk in the sea of pastels and linens. Arthur cleared his throat, tapping a spoon against his glass. The music stopped. "Thank you all for coming," Arthur began, sweeping his arm grandly. 70 years, it's a milestone, but tonight isn't just about looking back. It's about moving forward. As many of you know, this house, this beautiful estate, has been the Vance family home for 30 years, but Vanessa and I have decided it's time for a new chapter. He squeezed Vanessa's hand. She beamed. "We are officially listing the manor on Monday," Arthur announced, beaming. "And we'll be retiring to a beautiful waterfront property in Sarasota. To new beginnings." "Hear, hear," a few guests shouted, raising their glasses. "Actually," I said, The word cut through the applause like a guillotine. It wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Arthur froze, his smile twitched. "Excuse me." "Actually, Arthur," I said, taking a step forward, "you won't be listing the house on Monday." The silence that descended was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. "Abigail," Arthur hissed, his face flushing a dangerous shade of red. "Not now, don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene," I said calmly, opening the portfolio. "I'm clarifying the public record. You can't sell this house, Arthur, because you don't own it." Vanessa laughed nervously. "Of course he owns it, don't be silly." "No," I said, pulling out the deed of trust. I held it up, turning so the guests could see the stamped official seal. "My mother, Eleanor Vance, placed this property into an irrevocable trust before she died. The grantee is the trust, and the trustee is me." I looked directly at the realtor, a slick-looking man in a gray suit who was standing near the buffet. "Are you Brock?" I asked. He nodded, looking terrified. "Yes." "Did you receive a listing agreement for this property?" Yes," Brock stammered. "Signed yesterday." "Signed by whom?" I asked. "By the owner," Brock said, glancing at Arthur. "By Abigail Vance." I pulled out the second document, the affidavit of forgery. "That's interesting," I said, my voice turning to steel, "because I didn't sign anything. In fact, I haven't spoken to this man about the property in 10 years. I turned back to Arthur. He looked like he was having a stroke. His mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. "You forged my signature, Arthur," I said, my voice ringing out in the silent garden. "Just like you forged the narrative about me stealing that money 10 years ago." "Shut up," Arthur screamed, losing all composure. He lunged forward, but Theo stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "She's talking, Dad," Theo said, his voice shaking but firm. "Let her talk." "You want to talk about money?" I continued, relentless. "Let's talk about the $10,000 you accused me of stealing. The money you kicked a 19-year-old girl out onto the street for." I pointed to Theo. "Theo found it yesterday, in the basement, where you hid it, drunk, behind a false wall." A gasp rippled through the crowd. "But that didn't stop you from trying to bribe me, did it?" I pulled out the check he had mailed me. $5,000. That's what he sent me, everyone. A bribe to sign a quitclaim deed so he could sell my house, pocket the $1 million in equity, and run away to Florida. I turned to Vanessa. She had let go of Arthur's arm and was backing away, looking at him with a mixture of horror and calculation. "He's broke, Vanessa," I said, dropping the bomb. "He has 3 mechanics' liens on the house. He's maxed out his credit cards. He hasn't had a paying client in 5 years. He was selling this house illegally just to pay off his debts and fund the fantasy he promised you." Vanessa turned to Arthur. "Is that true, Artie? You said you had a portfolio. You said the house was free and clear." "It is," Arthur sputtered, sweat pouring down his face. "She's lying. She's mentally unstable. I told you." "I have the credit report, Arthur," I said, holding up the final sheet. "Do you want me to read your FICO score to your friends?" Arthur looked around the patio. He looked at his friends, his colleagues, his peers. He was looking for an ally, someone to laugh it off, someone to tell him he was still the king. But all he saw was judgment. He saw He disgust on their faces. He saw the realization that the man they thought they knew was a fraud, a thief, and a liar who would sacrifice his own children for a country club membership. He slumped, the air went out of him. He looked, for the first time in his life, small. "Get out," he whispered. "No," I said. "This is my house. You are the guest here. You have a life estate, Arthur. You can live here, but you are a tenant. And as the trustee, I am evicting you for waste, fraud, and attempted embezzlement of trust assets." I turned to the guests. "The party is over. Please leave." It was a rout. The guests scattered like cockroaches when the lights turn on. They muttered apologies, grabbed their purses, and fled. Vanessa didn't even say goodbye. She walked straight to her red convertible, got in, and peeled out of the driveway without a backward glance. Arthur stood alone in the center of the patio, surrounded by half-eaten shrimp and the ruins of his life. The silence that followed the exodus was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the clean, sharp silence of a storm that has finally broken. I sat at the kitchen table, my mother's table, with Theo and Haley. Arthur had retreated to his study and locked the door. We could hear him in there, pacing, occasionally muttering to himself, the sound of glass clinking against a bottle. "Did you mean it?" Haley asked quietly, tracing the pattern on the tablecloth. "Is he really evicted?" "I can't legally kick him out tonight," I explained, my adrenaline finally fading into a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "The life estate is tricky, but the fraud, the forgery, that changes things. Marcus, my lawyer, says we can petition the court to remove his rights because he tried to sell the asset illegally. He breached his fiduciary duty to the remainderman, me." "He's going to go to jail?" Theo asked, looking sick. "Not if he agrees to my terms," I said. The next morning at 9:00 a.m., Marcus arrived. We sat in the living room. Arthur emerged from the study looking like a ghost. He was unshaven, wearing the same stained suit from the night before, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He didn't look at me, he looked at the floor. "Here is the deal, Arthur," I said, sliding a document across the coffee table. He picked it up, his hands shaking. "Option A," I said. "I file police reports for forgery and fraud. I sue you for the 10 years of back rent you charged Theo and Haley illegally since you didn't own the house. I expose the debts publicly in court. You go to prison." Arthur flinched. "Option B," I continued. "You sign this. It's a voluntary relinquishment of your life estate. You agree to vacate the property in 30 days. In exchange, I will pay off the mechanics liens so you don't get sued by the contractors. I will give you a stipend, enough to rent a small apartment, not a condo in Sarasota, for 1 year. After that, you are on your own." He looked up then. "You're kicking me out of my home." "It's not your home," I said, my voice devoid of anger. "It never was. It was Mom's, and you treated it like an ATM. You treated us like employees." He looked at the paper. He looked around the room, at the crown molding he bragged about, at the fireplace he posed in front of. Then he looked at Theo and Haley, who were standing behind me, a united front. He realized then that he had no leverage. No money, no family, no reputation. He took the pen and signed. 6 months later, I stood on the back porch of the manor, holding a mug of coffee. The air was crisp, smelling of burning leaves and rain. The house was different now. We had sold it, legally, properly. The proceeds were split 3 ways, as Mom would have wanted, even though the trust legally gave it all to me. I wasn't Arthur. I didn't hoard. Theo had used his share to start his own contracting business, doing work he was actually proud of. Haley was finishing her master's degree, debt-free. And me. I had used my share to buy a small brownstone in the city. It was mine. No liens, no secrets, no hidden traps. Arthur was living in a 1-bedroom apartment near the airport. I heard from an aunt that he was working part-time at a hardware store, telling anyone who would listen that he used to be a great architect, that he used to own a mansion. No one believed him. I took a sip of coffee and looked out at the yard one last time before the new owners moved in. The garden was overgrown, wild and beautiful. I thought about the 19-year-old girl who had walked down this driveway with a duffel bag, terrified and alone. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would be okay, that she would survive, that she would build a life stronger than the one she lost. But she knew that now. I turned around, walked back through the empty house, and closed the front door. The lock clicked shut with a solid, final sound. It was over.